Gravling the Cemeterian. Halflings, also called hobbits, are stereotypically described as small, lazy, jelly peasants with curly hair and fluffy feet, always ready to devour any amount of food, provided the taste and quantity are worth the effort. Their danger index varies between mostly harmless and totally harmless, provided there is no nasty surprise in their pocket seas. The halfling who burst into a lonely inn at the crossroads of forest paths and frowned at the staff broke the stereotypes at first glance. Sure, he had some curly hair, mostly behind his ears and on the lower back of his head, which was otherwise completely bald and covered with scars. His feet, hidden in knee-high rubber boots, might have been properly fluffy as well. But halflings usually walked barefoot whenever possible, so the boots alone were enough to raise questions. His clothing made a bold attempt to look peasant style, as he wore baggy dungarees with suspenders, and strangely braided leather belt around his waist. But he hadn't bothered with a shirt, and his bare, muscular shoulders and biceps suggested a body resembling a dwarf bodybuilder. It was hard to say what secrets were contained in the single large pocket on his chest. His spade, on the other hand, was nervously watched, curiously observed, or simply stared at by almost everyone in the inn. The heavy tool, slung casually over his shoulder, was a good bit longer than the halfling was tall. Spades had always been standard peasant equipment, but there was something fishy about this one. Suspiciously silver metal showed here and there beneath the grimy stains, and those with really keen eyesight or a trace of magical talent could detect some of the engraved runes. Whoever his had was the main source of the not your regular halfling, possibly not harmless at all impression. First, his short muscular neck made it look as if his head grew straight out of his massive shoulders. Second, the thin strand of beard growing from his chin, braided with some sort of wire, was rather unusual for halflings. Their faces were practically always bare and smooth as a baby backside. His big reddish nose was good old halfling standard, but the squinted eyes burning with rage, shielded by thick brows, and the face twisted into angry sneer, promising aggravated assault with peasant work too, serious injuries, and quite possibly very nasty infection due to the grimy stains on it, to anyone who gave its owner the slightest pretext. Well, that simply wasn't the usual expression of a halfling. Not even one who just found out that some nomad farmers had picked all his apricots during the night. The halfling seemed satisfied that everybody was staring at him. He spat angrily, bared his teeth, including several gold ones, and hissed, "Where's that knickerbocker who messed with my cemetery?" "No bar brawls in my inn. Take it outside," the bartender shouted immediately, and to add extra weight to his claim, hit the bar with a heavy, shortened, two-stringed arbalist, capable of delivering two painful prompts to obey the attendant's requests with one pull of the trigger. Everybody in the pub immediately turned their attention to one specific table. A deep black cloak and black hood, shading a deadly pale face, didn't automatically mark their wear as a lover of those types of magic that, on the spectrum from white to black, lurk at the dark edge of the arcane range, where even the biggest freethinkers and libertarians get a little nervous. But people still remembered, some of them too well, the loud laughter and bragging about yesterday's short but entertaining stop at the cemetery of a nearby halfling town. A minute ago, most of the guests had still agreed with the consensus that the halflings are a pathetic, harmless lot. Nobody had questioned the claim that halfling zombies raised for fun were the most ridiculous and miserable kind of undead. A gleeful giggle came from under the black hood at the table. The necromancer stood up, encouraging both his entourage and the whole pub in a merry, amused, rather high-pitched voice. "Come and watch. This is going to be funny for us." The halfling seemed to share the idea, grinning widely almost from ear to ear. He took one silent step back over the threshold and disappeared into the gloomy light outside of the inn. The necromancer followed, his mood still cheerful and his steps little too wobbly, accompanied by a small group of slightly nervous-looking men. There was no chance yet to determine from their equipment whether they considered honest banditry the next step in their career, or planned to take advantage of the supposed benefits available to those who serve the practitioner of the dark arts. The halfling waited in the middle of the muddy path, spade still on his shoulder, dimly illuminated by a few tentative rays of light from a lamp blinking curiously under the signboard. "That cemetery has been my family business for 3 generations," he declared angrily, his voice so strong that not only the necromancer, but also those drunkards who hadn't bothered to follow them out into the cold and damp, could hear him loud and clear. "Every knickerbocker or other pervert who tried his shit on my property paid a full price for it. My dad and grandpa would have been satisfied cutting you down and burning the pieces, you bastard. But I collect souvenirs. I already have a hook ready for your balls on the bulletin board, so I can hang them there and use them for target practice when I'm bored." The necromancer giggled again and pulled the hood back. "Well, you might have a little problem there, halfling," she announced happily, her smiling lips highlighted by a blood-red rouge, the only color in her otherwise chalk-white face. She shook her head, making her silver hair ripple in the night breeze, pulled her robes closer to her body, and wiggled her hips a little further, to emphasize her gender identity to the halfling. "I'll take the ovaries then," the halfling snapped. The lightning-quick strike of his spade followed in almost the same blink. At the last moment, the necromancer managed to raise her hand and conjure a shield before her face, only to increase her own shock and confusion when the runes engraved in the spade flashed with arcane fire, shattering the otherwise robust protective spell into shards. Fortunately, the shield held long enough, and the spade merely slid across the surface of the magical force field. But the halfling immediately rotated the grip in his hands, the sharp stab that followed aimed at her neck. The desperate necromancer summoned another almost useless shield, and barely managed to dodge the tip of the space again. When the halfling raised his weapon for another blow, she decided that, in this case, offense might be a safer approach. She made a complex gesture with her hand, and waved it in the halfling's direction. With a disdainful sneer, he caught a burst of necro-energy on his broad spade blade. The necromancer gasped at the sight of dark bolts of lightning flashing and dancing eerily around the metal shield, then watched in shock as the halfling turned his working tool in both hands, blade down, and rammed the spade tip into the muddy dirt. The powerful necroblast that should have reduced the daring halfling to a dying, rotting wreck, or turned him outright into a zombie, dissipated into the soil more or less harmlessly. Well, more or less, indeed. Fortunately, zombified earthworms usually don't get much chance to feast on anyone's brain, so they tend to disintegrate naturally after some time. Though the moray that ate one while it was still zombified might become a bit of a problem in the coming years. "Come on, don't just stand there, help me!" The retreating necromancer snapped at her companions, who stood motionless, staring at the halfling in awe and fear. Or, more precisely, they fixed their nervous eyes on something behind him in the darkness among the trees on the other side of the forest path. "What the fuck is that?" one of them shouted. The necromancer finally noticed a dark shadow moving slowly toward the halfling's back. It looked like a giant rat, bigger than a full-grown hound, only with a more rounded mouth. The mischievous eyes of the strange creature glowed red. The beast opened its mouth to show huge teeth and slapped its large, bare flat tail against the mud. The necromancer managed to notice that the creature had a small, simple saddle on its back. "That the fuck is a beaver," the halfling explained. Then below a word of command over his shoulder, "Chew him!" The necromancer's decapitated head rolled through the mud and kept staring at the beaver, which happily obeyed the order. The monster had already severed one minion's leg, smashed another to the ground with a tail strike, and attempted to snap up the third, who, mostly by chance and completely random movements, had managed to evade it several times, though he looked like a windmilling, spineless ragdoll. The halfling noticed that the last of the necromancer's helper, possibly smarter than the rest, was trying to flee. He stabbed with his spade, severing the spine of the desperate windmill dancer, pointed the bloody instrument toward the forest, and shouted at the beaver, "Chew that one!" The beaver happily bit the falling body with its huge teeth and shook it. "Not that one, you idiot, don't you? There, see, that one running after him. Chew him!" The beast nodded, with the bandage still in its mouth, and tried to chew through the heavy leather armor. The halfling rolled his eyes, took a quick step, and threw his spade like a javelin. It hit the escaping necromancer's helper between the shoulder blades, and pierced through him with such force that it pinned the quivering body to a tree. The halfling went after it, tore it free, then grabbed the corpse by the ankle and dragged it back onto the road, where the beaver was still crunching. The armor seemed to be resistant to its blunt teeth, but the body inside was loudly cracking. "Don't chew! Stop chewing that!" snapped the halfling. He took a piece of rope from the huge pocket on the front of his dungarees and started tying the bodies together. The beaver spat out the corpse and watched it mournfully. "Well, carnivorous giant beaver, now I've seen everything," noted one of the gawkers. "He's not carnivorous. He just loves chewing on leather," murmured the halfling, and then, since the beaver thought it was a permission to resume, had to shout, Don't chew on that!" "And who the hell are you, mister?" one of the braver drunks asked. The halfling, having tied all the corpses together, looked up. Name's Mariano Subatum, but everyone just calls me Cemeterian, or Gravling. I'm the gravedigger at half past lunch. I do my own stonework, and I also do embalming for those willing to pay for it. I thought it was old Digo, someone said. Happy little guy, very hairy. Dad died last year, snapped the Cemeterian. I had to move back to town to take care of the family business. Any more stupid questions? No? Goodbye then. With that, he heaved a pile of bodies onto the beaver's back, tied them down, picked up the necromancer's body himself, with the head tied by its hair to one hand, and started walking away. What are you going to do with the bodies? Somebody shouted. Bury them. What did you think, idiot? I'm a gravedigger after all. And thanks to this bitch meddling, I've got vacancies.